In this video, I'm going to show you how to go from here to here for a great tortoise habitat. Our first step is going to be to rehydrate blocks of coconut fiber. These two brands, Exoterra and Zoomed, are for the most part interchangeable. I'll just buy whatever is most readily available. I prefer to soak 2 blocks per 5-gallon bucket. When I place the blocks in the bucket, I'll put them in there horizontally on their thin side, as this allows the water absorption to occur relatively evenly. After the blocks are put in there, it's time to start adding water. I use super hot water. I'll just sit back and watch the coconut fiber soak up the water. As exciting as it may be to watch the ground coconut expand, I'll leave it sit while I move on to the next several things I need to do. First, I'll have to choose a place to put this tortoise habitat, and then I'll have to begin putting together the shelves that the tortoise habitat will sit on. After I've put the shelves together, I'll drill a hole through the light fixture and one of the wood portions of the shelves, and using nut, bolt, and 2 washers at each end of the 48-inch fixture, I'll attach it to the bottom of the shelf. You can see that from above. The bolts have a relatively low profile and don't take up much space. They're pretty unobstructive. And look at that, we have light. Next, I'll need to put the 50-gallon Rubbermaid stock tank on the bottom. By the way, how's that coconut fiber doing? Still expanding. So we'll keep going. In my tortoise habitats, I like to use a PVC irrigation system. This irrigation system allows me to water the grass and other edible plants that are in there from the bottom. This helps to prevent the top layer of substrate where the tortoises live from being overly wet or just soggy. As you can see, the irrigation system is simple enough. It's just a network of PVC pipes that I've drilled many holes into. Just like the expanding coconut fiber, this process can take a little while. And there. Now that I'm done drilling all these holes, I've got to put the PVC system into the habitat. You can see all the little tiny holes that are eventually going to feed the grass and other plants that I put inside of the habitat. Now that I know that my network fits, it's time to start adding the first layers of gravel, and then substrate. I'm adding worms for the substrate because it's good for roots. After the worms, I'll put in a ton of grass seed. After putting the grass seed down, I'll add another layer of substrate. I start with the cocoa fiber and break that up. Then I'll add peat moss. Peat moss helps prevent against fungus growing, which is important in the kind of wet conditions. After the peat moss, just time to add some topsoil that you can get from any hardware store, and I mix it all by hand. The end result of my mixing? Absolutely filthy hands. It's important to give your tortoises a dark hide box for them to feel secure. I'll cut a hole into the side of a Rubbermaid container, a hole that's big enough for the tortoise to get through. And then to give them a little bit of heat while they're in there sleeping, I'll put a small Zoomed heat pad on the bottom of the Rubbermaid container. Once I've got that Rubbermaid hide box situated the way I want, it's time to add the next and top layer of substrate. I'll add cypress mulch to their hide box. This gives them a little bit of humidity and also helps to disperse the heat from the pad underneath of it, which prevents thermal burns on the bottom of their shells. And here's what it looks like just after I've gotten finished. You can see the PVC pipes that come up that allow me to pour the water into the irrigation network. A food bowl full of leafy greens and a nice water bowl are the finishing touches in the cage decor. In addition to the ultraviolet lights that provide full spectrum UV, a heat lamp is also needed. I'll use a 100-watt red infrared bulb and run that 24 hours a day. After a few weeks, you can see the top layer is nice and dry, and there's lots of green grass in there to make the tortoise feel more at home, a little safer, and also from time to time to munch on. What you're looking at now are a few of the other habitats I've created using the same basic method and materials. These are large enough to give the tortoises and turtles adequate space to roam around. You can keep multiples of the same species, and they are large enough to house a medium-sized tortoise for its entire life. Now that I've shown you what I do to meet my turtles and tortoises housing need, in future videos, I'll introduce you to some of the different species that I keep. We'll have a look at some of the things that make them the same, and some of the things that make them quite different from one another. I'll also show you some of the species-specific dietary needs, because not all tortoises eat all of the same foods. Some tortoises can't eat fruits and need higher fiber content in their diet. And even though they live in similar habitats, box turtles require much different food on a day-to-day basis than their tortoise cousins. And so, in my future videos, I'll show you how a little bit of effort and some excellent care can make sure your turtles and tortoises have a long, healthy life.